into criminality, police interference and corruption in the criminal justice system, also known as the Madlanga Commission in South Africa, continues to hear witness testimony. Our significant developments emerged this past week from both the Presidency and the Madlanga Commission. Another development involved the KwaZulu-Natal Hawks head Major-General Lesetja Senona, who claims he was ordered to hand over his work laptop, office keys and documents and was escorted out of the building on Saturday. Senona also alleges that he was followed home reportedly by vehicles linked to the KwaZulu-Natal South African Police Service. And to unpack this, we are joined on the line by Chad Thomas, CEO of IRS Forensic Investigations. Chad, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much for the invitation and good afternoon to you and the listeners.
Now, your takeaway from last week's Madlanga Commission sitting?
Since Madlanga's come back from its break, it's been bombshell after bombshell. We had General Gopal testifying against the possible interference regarding Minister Mkhunu. We then had witness E come onto the stand and again testify regarding Minister Mkhunu, saying that Mr. Mkhunu had phoned him, despite the fact that he was in witness protection from 2019, phoned him on a confidential number, even offered to write his submission for the Madlanga Commission. Then we had Senona on the stand, and Senona was an absolute bombshell in that he conceded to having an irregular relationship with Vusi Kapitala, and what made it all the worse is that he caught himself out. He said that he had stopped communicating with Vusi Kapitala in March of 2025 when he got to hear about the allegations against Vusi Kapitala, but it turns out he had communicated with him right up until the day before Vusi Kapitala was arrested. So this, of course, lends a lot of credence to what General Mkhwanazi has said about top police officers being involved with gangsters.
And, given that Major General Senona's history of leaking sensitive documents to alleged crime kingpin Kat Matlala, do you believe that the KZN police security concerns over his weekend office visit were justified? And could this be an overreach by Provincial Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi?
No. What came out of the Commission of Inquiry was devastating in respect of the character that we're dealing with in terms of Senona. One has to go back 2 decades and understand why Jackie Celebi was convicted of corruption in the Glenn Agliotti case. And in the Glenn Agliotti case, although he was friends and almost a brother to Glenn Agliotti, Jackie Celebi shared with him sensitive documentation from the United Kingdom law enforcement that indicated that Glenn Agliotti was the focus of an investigation. And this is a very similar issue. We now have sensitive documents being shared with somebody who's a known criminal. Those documents that have been shared don't redact and they haven't been sensitized in respect of force numbers, ID numbers, and names of police officers. It's just shared willy-nilly, and he can't give a justified reason why he shared it, nor can he give a justified reason as to him purportedly not knowing that Vusi Kapitala was the focus of multiple investigations. You must remember, this is a Major General with top secret clearance. He's not just a Major General in charge of the Hawks in KwaZulu-Natal. He sits on the top management of the Hawks countrywide, which means he sits in on all the project meetings. He would know off the bat that Vusi Kapitala is the focus of investigation. So having somebody with such a senior level of authority within the police, as well as having a top secret clearance, in this form and manner, communicating with somebody who's the focus of multiple investigations, it brings the entire service into disrepute.
And, what are the proper legal procedures for seizing a senior officer's work laptop and documents? And under what circumstances would such a seizure be considered irregular or unlawful? And also, Chad, can data be accessed, altered or deleted without leaving a forensic trail?
Of course, people can change devices, people can amend meta and geodata. It's very important that devices are taken into custody as soon as possible, but there has to be a process that's followed. There has to be a search and seizure warrant, and I'm not sure whether a warrant was served, but with it being police equipment and perhaps there being a suspension in the background that we don't know about, which may lead to a disciplinary, this may be what happened. We haven't been taken into the full confidence of the KwaZulu-Natal police, albeit that they did state to us that his behavior on Saturday was exceptionally strange. Firstly, he didn't park in his designated parking bay. He parked across the road from the head office. Secondly, he had a meeting in his vehicle with a colonel from his unit for about 45 minutes. And then thirdly, he didn't sign in, although his secretary signed in. So you had all these people coming in on a Saturday under these suspicious circumstances, and this raised suspicion within the police hierarchy, hence the reason why police security contacted the provincial commissioner.
Now, we have run out of time, but I have to ask, the claims of him being followed or surveilled and what kinds of evidence would support or disprove such claims? And would it be, if it is true, would it be in the police's rights to do that?
Look, I'm getting Brown Mokgotsi and Paula Sullivan vibes with these conspiracies, these shootings, these attempts on their lives. To me, it seems as if the minute somebody is identified as being potentially a part of the so-called cartel, suddenly their lives are in danger, suddenly they are being followed, and suddenly they need to protect their security. So I take it with a pinch of salt. And if he was followed, we've got LPRs, which are license plate recognition cameras that are on all of our main routes throughout the country. It would be easily detectable whether or not he was in fact followed. But like I said, I'm getting Brown Mokgotsi and Paula Sullivan vibes, who also are claiming that their lives are in danger.
Chad, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. That's Chad Thomas, CEO of IRS Forensic Investigations, joining us on the line. It is 12:30 Central African Time, and our news headlines up next.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Britain's foreign minister set to visit Ethiopia today says her visit to the country will focus on